Hi, this is Joseph Kraft. I am the founder of thinkadoo.com. It's THINKAEDO.com. Go ahead and check it out. Today we're going to talk about metaphysics and what metaphysics is and the questions of metaphysics. Before we get to that though, if you could like this page if you enjoy it, follow my channel, share it with your friends. If you like it, chances are they will too. So what is metaphysics? Well, if you've watched my ethics video, you know that that philosophy divides into a descriptive side, or questions of what is, and a normative side, or what they should be. Ethics is the normative side. Ethics answers questions of how things should be, what we should do. Metaphysics, broadly speaking, is the descriptive side. It answers questions of how things are, what the ultimate nature of the universe is. What the nature of mind is, your mind. How is your mind constituted? What is it made of? Is it a product of chemical processes, or is it a separate substance entirely? How does it interact with the body? These are questions of mind. These are metaphysics questions. Metaphysics deals with questions of language, philosophy of language, philosophy of science. These are metaphysics questions, questions about what the world really is composed of, descriptive questions of the world. This is metaphysics as opposed to ethics. But the quintessential metaphysics question, the one that is kind of the heart of metaphysics, is ontology. And that is the question of being, or of what the ultimate reality is. And that sounds kind of mundane at first, but when you get into it, it gets really interesting. It started in the history of Western philosophy with the pre-Socratics. These are the philosophers that came before Socrates, so before about 500 BC in Greece, mostly in Athens, or Athens and the surrounding area. So the pre-Socratics were occupied with the question of being versus becoming, and they split into the being camp and the becoming camp. And this really breaks down to, how can we have change and yet have something stay the same? So the famous way of saying this is how can we say that the river, I live near the Brazos River, so how can I say it's the Brazos River today and it's the Brazos River tomorrow, when the whole time it's going to be, water's going to be flowing down, it's going to be changing, there will be erosion and evaporation, there will be very little that's actually the same tomorrow as it is today. So some philosophers would land on the becoming side, and they would say there is nothing static. It's constant flux, constant change. Everything's always changing, and we impose these kind of ideas of continuity onto things to make sense of them, but in reality there is no continuity, only change. The being side would say, no, it's only static. Change is an illusion. Change is something that we see, that we place on the world in some way, but it's not real. Well, over time, some consensus developed among philosophers, if there is ever any consensus among philosophers, that there has to be something static underlying everything else. Not that there's no change, but that there is something underneath it. A good example is if you think of a footprint. A footprint presses into the mud. The print itself is not mud. It's an impression. It's something left behind by something else, and it's a change in the surface of the mud. But the mud has to be there to have a footprint. The mud itself would be the static thing. And that came to be known as substance. In Western philosophy. So then there's all these questions of, well, what is substance? What is the ultimate composition of reality? There have been three primary answers to that question. The first one is materialism. Materialism says that there is only material objects. Nothing exists that is not material. So I exist, you exist, the camera exists, the computer you're watching this on exists. But that's all. My mind is merely the result of the chemical processes in the brain. This leads to some problems because people like to think that their mind is actually something. They like to think that emotions are something that universal. So when I say I'm a person and you are a person, that's not something fake. That's not something that we've imposed. That's a real thing. There is such a thing as people. That's a universal. That's really doesn't exist if the world is strictly materialist. The other side of the spectrum is idealism. This is the idea that everything, it could be thought of as ideaism. Everything is an idea in the mind. The material world does not exist. Only our mental activity, our mental experience of the material world exists. That sounds like a really far-fetched theory until you start actually analyzing it and realize that we don't actually have experiences directly of the material world. We have experiences of our ideas. So we take in sense data, we interpret it as being from the physical world, but we can't see the physical world. We can only see the data that our brain interprets. That runs the gamut of there's a spectrum of idealism. Bishop George Berkeley, whom Berkeley, the university was named for, believed that the material world could not exist without being observed. He said, to be is to be seen. And ultimately, that the only way the material world could exist is that God was constantly observing it. This is an extreme form of idealism. The middle ground between the two is called dualism, and it's really this idea that somehow there are two substances. There is the material world, but there is also the mental world, or the state of ideas, the world of ideas. That's kind of a common sense theory, but it has all sorts of problems because you run into all these questions of, if they're two completely separate substances, how can they interact with each other? Certainly the mental world and the physical material world do interact with each other. You have a thought and then you act on it. I thought I wanted to make this movie about metaphysics. Here I am making it. You have, and it goes the other way too. If you are drinking a material drink, alcohol, it has mental effects on you without a question. So there is definitely interaction, but if they're two distinct substances, where does that interaction come from? So that's a brief overview of metaphysics and especially ontology. I'm going to be making new videos every week. I am the doing philosopher. I'm doing things and making philosophy videos. So if you like this, check out my other videos. Click like below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next week. Thanks very much.